Welcome to the Behind the Frame podcast, hosted by me, Rebecca Yale. I'm a destination wedding photographer and educator working in the luxury marketplace, and on this podcast, I'll be pulling back the curtain, sharing what goes on behind the scenes working in the luxury wedding industry. Hey friends, welcome back to the Behind the Frame podcast. I am so excited today to have on the pod someone who I personally admire so much, the incredible artist, designer, planner, and all-around style guru, Barbi Walters of Lynden Lane Co. Barbi Walters is the founder and principal designer of Lynden Lane Co., the company sought after for architecting transformative events and designing interior spaces that reflect style, heritage, and human connection. As a dynamic mother-daughter team, they approach each project with the expertise, agility, and a sense of humor. Their passion is fueled by creating unmatched environments from the ground up, daring to push conventional boundaries. They pride themselves on being both the writers of the story and the editors, crafting inimitable and then refining it, allowing them to produce a kind of grandiose that is always intentional, authentic to its environment, personal, and full of life. And on a personal note, Barbi and her daughters, Lindsay and Lane, are artists who I've looked up to for many years now, and I'm constantly inspired by their creations and how they push boundaries of what an event and a space can be. Barbi has been helping my husband and I transform our house into a home for the last year, and I will forever be grateful to her for putting up with us and all of our craziness. I always tell my clients when I'm shooting them that my approach is about capturing them at their most authentic selves, but refined. And that's what Barbi has most certainly done for Nick and I. She has let us be our crazy selves with our bright colors, too many patterns, and way too many butterflies. But she and her business partner, Jenna, have managed to elevate it every step along the way and create something beyond our wildest dreams. So welcome to the pod, Barbi. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. You made me cry right off the bat. Like, geez.
It is
Can we
all
just
from
end
the
right
heart.
there? I think that was good.
Okay, pod over.
Perfect.
No need for you to say anything.
No need for me. You said everything that much better than I would ever hope someone would say it. So it's been my pleasure to work with you guys. It's been so much fun.
I have so much that I want to talk to you about, and I think I'll have to ask you back like a whole nother time, maybe with Jenna, to like just talk about the interior side of things, because I think that would be so much fun. But since like I think most people listening want to hear about weddings right now, I want to start today by talking about your journey into weddings. We're going to talk about how to stand out in a crowded market and doing that through your incredible design work and what it's like to work with the kinds of clients you work with, which are amazing ultra high net worth individuals, which come with ultra high expectations. But before we got into it, I think your story in particular, I feel like you guys like everyone builds somewhere, and I'm sure you guys did, but you guys kind of looked like you start from the outside. It looks like you started on the top. Like you guys came in swinging, and like the first time usually I hear someone's name, I see early work and I'm like, and then like a few years in, I'm like, oh, I want to work with this person. Like the first time I saw you guys, I was like, oh, my dream. So tell me your origin story.
Oh, yes. It was just an overnight success. We opened up and boom, we were just like making beautiful events. I wish
That's what it looks like from the outside, though, for the record.
Good old Instagram, good old Instagram. It started, gosh, now I have to update my bio here. So 2012, Lane, I always joke we are the annoying people that did a wedding and then we're like, we could do this. So Lane got married in Montecito at the Four Seasons in 2012. And when we were planning, we hired a planner. And when we were doing that wedding, we got very involved in the design aspect of it. And afterwards, when we were done, people are like, oh, wait, where did all that stuff go at the Four Seasons? And then we're like, oh, we brought that in, or we did this, or we changed that. And they're like, oh, so basically you redecorated the Four Seasons in Santa Barbara. And we're like, kind of a little bit. But that was because we really felt like we wanted it to be our own space. We didn't want it to look like a recycled ballroom and it to feel really like what Lane's personal style was. And so after the wedding, I had owned a couple other businesses and still owned another business at that time. I looked at the market and I thought, probably uneducatedly thought, oh, wow, this is a real gap, that there isn't people doing this residential feel, that everything didn't feel so related to a wedding, as I called it, wash, rinse, and repeat. And so we said, okay, I said, oh, let's start a new business, which is sort of, I'm a serial entrepreneur, so that happens. And then for 5 years, the part that you didn't see was taking all sorts of kinds of events and building our street cred and learning what did work and didn't work. So that's kind of how we got we got started, because of Lane's way. And obviously we have a real love of design. And we were looking for an outlet for that. And weddings became a natural byproduct that we could do and explore all these different levels of design. But it really was because of our love of putting together a space for somebody, whether it be us or a client.
I love that you said that, almost like if you thought it was a gap in the market, or like maybe you didn't know. I feel like life, and especially entrepreneurship, is a balance between you want to do your market research, but sometimes it's better like not to know a little bit, because you get too in your head and then you'll be too afraid to ever try.
Oh,
So
100%. Yeah, you start looking, you're like, oh my God, they're so much better. They're already doing this. I couldn't possibly doing that. And so having a little bit of the blinders on, I think, is a good idea when you're starting. Not to be uneducated about what the costs are going to be and all of those things, but not to squelch your creativity, because I think at some point you have to just dive off that big board that you're terrified of. And no amount of measuring how high the board is or how deep the pool is going to make you any braver. You finally just have to jump. And that's what we did. And then, like I said, then for 5 years, we just really put in the real work, if you will, behind the fun part of design, so that we could get to that next level.
yeah, I think it's sometimes the like, why not me, like the why not you thing that we it's so easy to put ourselves down and be like, well, this person is doing it. And it's like, well, why can't I do it too? Especially, yeah, especially when you do see a gap in the market. And I think that's what gravitated me towards your work. That I was, when I was coming up in weddings, which we started around the same time, I was, I guess, a year ahead of like, I started looking into weddings in 2011 and being like, what is this? Like, do I like it? Like, are they cheesy? And I
Right.
feel like it's because people like you were entering the space that no, they didn't have to be cheesy anymore. All of a sudden, I like, when I got into weddings, I loved that like someone was creating a microcosm that I could step into. And to do that, I need you. I need someone creating that microcosm. So thank you for doing that and for elevating weddings.
It's so fun to be able to just create such an environment for people. And it's so crazy that it's gone 3 days after you create it. But yeah, it's our joy getting to do that.
That's why you need a good photographer to capture
That's right, that's right.
it.
Otherwise, it's gone, and people are like, "Did that even exist?" I'm like, "Yes, that's why we have pictures of it."
But
I-
it's amazing to create this ephemeral space that only gets to exist for such a short time.
Yeah.
And that people do get to step in. There's a Miro quote that I love that I have on my website. And I think it's about photos, but it works with events in the same way, where it's the idea of like, you can look at a photo all your life and never think of it again, or you can look at a photo for a split second and remember it for all your life. And it's the same with an event of how you can feel like we live all, especially like, gosh, during the pandemic, I think it changed the way all of us view time.
Yes.
That like we can live months without like I like, it's like the pin in the brain of like putting a pin in our brain of a memory, or in a single weekend or a single night you can put 1,000 pins in your brain and have all these memories. And that's what you're doing.
And
You're
that's what we're trying to create lasting memories in a very transitional moment that goes by so fast for the clients. And we just talked about it, and I know from photography, you're always trying to get the client to slow down, but it's really hard for not only for the client, for all of us, because we're moving so quickly and so many things are happening. So we're trying to create something that's going to anchor those memories for them by creating this space that they live in, that is uniquely theirs and doesn't belong to the genericness of the venue that could be a ballroom or even a lawn or whatever it is, that it's uniquely yours. And I feel like that helps them hold on to that moment, that feeling that they have during the event. And that's our goal, is that that feeling lives on with them.
So
Correct.
tell me, I feel like we skipped, which I tend to do this too, skipping over like those first 5 years of my business. We just kind of brush past. We have to like pretend those didn't exist, but this is the behind the frame. So I'd love for someone, I think like you and your daughters are so well respected in our industry, and so many people view, like when I have told people, like I've literally had people do, wait, excuse me, when I have told them that you are decorating our house, they're like, what? How and why? And I'm like, thank you. So building that reputation, and just like how, like really the entire industry has such respect for you. When I've been asking other people to be on the pod and they're a little nervous, and I'm like, oh no, it's going to be great. And I've been telling them other people who've said yes. And when I say your name, they're like, wait, I don't want to do it. That like, she's going to be amazing. And I'm not as cool as her. Which you have that cool it factor. But tell me, in your business, like how, because so much of what you've already like mentioned of getting your clients to trust you, and creating this space with them, like you're now working with so many of your ideal clients. We don't have to talk about the ones currently that aren't. Hopefully they all are, and by that I mean myself, the crazies. But tell me how you built your business to allow you to, and like it sounds, that sounds like it's an easy thing, but so let's talk about it in the not so easy terms. Like how did you get to the place where you're creating such a unique thing that no one else is really creating, or especially at the time,
Right.
and how did you find the clients to come in and trust you?
Well, that's always the $1 million question, finding the right client that will trust you. And it's always ironic that at the very end, when you're all done and they're walking in their way, they're like, we could have never done this without you. We trust you with everything. But the process along the way sometimes is as more earning their trust. But when we first started, we had very small budgets, and I don't even know if you'd call them budgets. They were just like allowances to do this. We would really concentrate on one element of the event that we thought we could really elevate somehow, whether it be in what the quality of the thing was, or in the uniqueness for us, like creating something custom for them, whether it be in their paper goods or whatever that may be. And so we focused on that element to start launching, so we could really showcase that. And then really, we were very strategic about the partners, the creative partners that we were going to work with, that we wanted to work with. And I I need to come up with a targeted list. I was going to say a hit list, but a targeted list is a much nicer term.
It's
But
okay. I said earlier to John Dolan that we're just guns for hire.
he's like, I don't know if you can say that. I know I have a friend that does photography and does like a lot of political people. And I always like, oh, did you shoot though? And he's like, I can't say it that way. I'm like, oh, right, you're right. Did you photograph? So we had a targeted list of creative partners that we wanted to work with. And we knew we couldn't get all of them on one event or do that. So we would just like be like, if we could get so-and-so to shoot this wedding, or if we could get some, because then we were looking at, now obviously first and foremost, we loved their work and we knew that they would be an asset to our client. That's always the first thing. But let's say we wanted to work with Gabby in florals from La Musa, we'd be like, okay, we're going to take from some other areas in the budget to get this amazing floral person, so that now our event looks all the better. And now she's promoting in that. And we did that with, we had a wedding, and I think I talked about it in Engage, where the bride just happened to have access to beautiful gowns. They weren't the ones she even wore to the wedding, but she had these, and we did this crazy shoot out in the desert. And then we had this photographer, KT, who was promoting our work, and the Monique, and I think, I can't remember who, Ann Barge and someone else, their dresses were being promoted on, by a Lynden Lane. And so we were elevated to this next echelon of client. And so we were always looking at where could we step up to the next one. And I think partnering with these people really made the difference for us to start to get into the higher net worth, the people that were willing to invest in some of the moments that we wanted to create, because doing custom and creating these big installs is not for the weak of heart or the weak of wallet. You know, you need to be prepared for that. And it's always a culture shock, but you kind of walk them through why it costs more to do it that way. But that's what that 5 years was literally. And there would be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward. And I think everyone will tell you, there's events that you do that you love the people, you love everything about it, but they weren't something that you were pushing out on your promotions to do that. So we were, I will say Lane is a strategic master on what's going to be published and what's going to be what links to the next level and what pictures look good together and what message those pictures are implemented. Because you got, one image can really give a feeling of something so amazing. And so anyways, we were very controlling.
I love that. I think what you just said, and I think this is like such the key to success, that like to give a couple of takeaways from that for people listening in who maybe, I know we have all different types of vendors. And I this is a mistake I see a lot when I'm doing my teachings, that people focus on one of the, so I feel like you just said 2 things. You said we did a ton, but we only showed a little.
Mm-hmm.
And what we showed was really targeted and really specific. And that's the mistake I see people make all the time, where they either don't do a ton, and they only do the targeted and the little, and that tends to often be styled shoots,
Right.
or they're doing a ton and they're showing a ton. And you need like the truly successful, and especially like, I know you're like, oh, way back, like 2012 is not that long time. That's
No,
like,
it really,
like
I know,
look
I
at
feel
like
like,
where you started to where you are. Like I'm gonna go ahead and say meteoric, like I'm gonna put it out there. But it's because you were doing those 2 things at once. And I think that's what I see, because you need the real life experience. You need to know what happens when the venue floods, or the
right, or
bride's
the
dress
lens
rips
come
in
in too
half.
short.
Yes, all those things. And if you've only done the styled shoots and the perfect, you can't do that other side of it. And if you're doing it all and showing it all, you're not going to be attracting those key clients. So it's really both going together.
It is, that's, you articulated what I was saying so well. I think you have to be very strategic, and yes, we all have to pay the bills. So you may be doing a lot of work, but you don't always want, if what you want to showcase to get the client that wants that, then you're very strategic about what you show.
Absolutely. I would love to go from there to talk a little bit more about how we are both in California. It's a very crowded market, although we do both work destination. I'd love to hear how you guys worked on developing your unique voice as artists and designers, because I feel that I can look at one of your weddings and know that it's one of your weddings. There's just such, and residential is truly it. And that's probably why I think I have told you this at this point, but I had DM'd you guys on Instagram about my house, pretending I wasn't me, because I was so embarrassed, because I was like, there's no way that I can actually like afford to work with them or make any of this happen. So I pretended I was like, it's for a friend. And I was like, hi, I'm the friend. But it was before we'd actually like put in, like, we were still like in escrow, like we hadn't closed on the house, but I was so excited at the idea of working with you guys that was part of what made me want this house, is like
Oh
what
my
I knew it
gosh.
could become. And I think the residential feel that you mentioned earlier, in your design approach, is such a big part of what drew me to your work in the first place. So I'd love to hear like how you guys built that, and how
Uh,
you have the through line. Like all your events look so different, but they look like yours.
Thank you. That's such a nice compliment, and it makes us so happy, because we always say we're our own worst enemy, because we never want to do anything the same way that again. So we always are starting from scratch every single time. I think our through line is obviously to beat a dead horse, the residential portion, but the fact that there isn't a detail too small for us to obsess with. And those details, those elements, I should say, can sometimes seem small in themselves, but they start to reveal themselves in such a way that the full picture isn't seen until the end. I said one time, a friend just reminded me this one time, she said, I saw your pictures and they were so beautiful. It was this beautiful tapestry of colors. And I thought, well, if you would have flipped it over on the other side, you would have seen all the knots and little cut pieces that I sewed back together to make that tapestry on the other side. But it really hit me that that is what our events are. There, each stitch has a meaning in and of itself. Is it that big? No. But when you put them all together, it shows this really layered, textured, lived in sort of an event. And that's what we wanted. That's what we want to bring to any design we're doing, whether it be interiors, whether it be a wedding or an event. We want it to feel that it just has been there a while, that it's got some love and patina, and that happens through those little details that we obsess over and
Like
over.
the
Like
10%
little,
color difference on the paint behind us, which, gosh, the amount of people who have asked me on Instagram, oh my God, what paint color is that? And I'm like, it's Barbie's custom coloring,
I
of
know, you
course. Like,
get more black.
I'm like,
No,
off the rack? Hell no.
well, every time
Couture
we change it
only.
after off the rack, we change it 90 times. I mean, and that's a sickness we have. We literally are the people that one time we're sitting at a stoplight and we're like, oh, look, El Pollo redid their logo at this place. I wonder why they picked that color. That really works. I like that a lot better. I wonder if I mean, we are always noticing design everywhere we go, and what that brings to it. So yeah, I think that is our through line, is that layered attention to detail. And the fact that there's three of us with very differing opinions on things, so that by the time we craft something, it's well layered and in blood, sweat, and tears.
How do you stay inspired? How do you bring that energy to each project?
Well, our clients inspire us. I mean, as you know, I probably would normally not have lit into such a colorful palette as yours, but I have ended up loving every second of it and getting into it. So I think our clients really do inspire us because they push our boundaries and then we push their boundaries. So our favorite thing is when somebody says, oh, I want to incorporate this. And we're like, ooh, that's gonna be scary. I don't know if we want to do that. And then eventually we find a way. We have a term here. I don't know if I should say it out loud, but I'm going to. We're like, oh, we Lynden Lane them. Like, oh, we got their stuff and then we just kept working till they were Lynden Laned. Like, it's a craft. Like, we make it into what we think the right version is for the event. So I think that's it. We verb them. We Lynden Lane them.
I love that, which either means I feel like find a way to refine it, or your clients in I'll say in my case end up realizing that yeah, they were right, and let's sell that ugly carpet that you bought the first time and get the one that they
It
suggested
is
the whole
sometimes
time.
hard when you're in the beginning, you're like, I've got to give the client a win. Like, I need to let them know that they're being heard, but you're like, I don't know if that's the right choice. But but our clients really do. Our clients, our venues, travel really inspire us, and all of those things. I mean, I think everybody says that, but it really is the truth that it's all the places we've been, and then combined with all the places you've been and your story, and putting those together is what inspires us. And finding what makes somebody tick, what makes their eyes light up, is really nice.
I feel one of the unique things that when I'm looking through your portfolio that I can see is that your weddings look like a lot of fun. I feel like with high-end weddings, especially, like a lot of times, I remember Carrie Goldberg said this to me years ago, that when she was still at Bazaar and she was looking through portfolios and she'd see empty bars, like not the empty bar shot, but like empty bar during the wedding. She was like, "Ooh, what's wrong with it?" And I was like, "Oh my God, yes." Like that is, it really stuck with me that like people should be like, you don't want a long line at the bar because then the bartenders aren't going fast enough, but like people should be up and about and mingling and talking and having a good time. And I feel like I look at your weddings and people are having a good time. So I love that like emphasis on experience, that the details matter, but the details are working in service of the experience.
Yes, if your details are just there to be pretty and not tell the story and not pull the emotion, whether it be a tear-jerking moment or a really fun moment, then they're just, I always say they're decorating, they're not designing.
Oh,
And
I
so
love that. That's brilliant.
thank you. But it's true. It's like the different, because we want, okay, so if we do a design element and we have some really cool moment that's happening, we might strategically put that cool moment, whatever it may be, a really great vignette, or we just did a wedding where there was tarot card readers and all these different things, but we're not going to put those front and center, even though they may be a front and center element. We may tuck those away a little bit so that people have to go find them, because exactly what you're saying, movement creates energy, and people then are talking to a different group of people than they would have been when they were just sitting at their dinner. So in the design portion, you're thinking about what the experience and how the client and the guest are going to move through what you designed. Because if they end up sitting static like a mushroom, then it's no fun. You haven't done a very good job. You need to get people moving and having, it's a wedding.
Even more than design, it's architecting.
Yes.
You're not just the designer, you are the architect of
Yes.
this. I love
Yeah.
that. And it's funny when you say the mushroom comment, that a lot when potential clients will ask me like, how many photos will I get from an event? I'm like, it depends on your event. Like so
Yeah.
many, like half of your gallery is the reception. And if everyone is seated, and like sometimes it's cultural, but like if
Right.
everyone's seated at their table and not up talking to each other, like there's not much to photograph. If people are having a blast, that's
Right.
going to be in your photos.
And that's so fun. You get someone cracking up laughing, or someone wiping away a tear, or all of those things. Those are fun. That's what makes an event. That's what makes it stay in their hearts. So our design has to facilitate that. It can't just be pretty. It has to be an experience that we want them to have.
I'd love to hear with that experience and like part of what we're talking about. I talk a lot when I'm teaching about working in the luxury and ultra. There's all these funny words now
Oh,
of yeah, it sounds like the college degrees, the ultra high net worth, whatever it is, ultra high net luxury, whatever it is now we're calling it. But in to the reason that I wanted to work in the luxury market, a big one of those reasons was I wanted to get to work with amazing people like you. I wanted to get to work with those designers who were working in that space. And I know one of the reasons that a lot of people are working in that space is because when there is more money, there's more options. We're able to have more. I mean, there's beautiful things that can be done at every wedding. And some of my favorite weddings that I've even like had featured on Martha Stewart were like in someone's backyard and no money was spent. But for
Right.
the most part, to like get those great designs, we need to spend a little bit of money. So tell me what it's like. We've like fast forwarded now like through those beginning stages of your career, and now you're working with these ideal clients who, which I always say to people, because I'll get told all the time that like, oh well, it's so easy for you, like your clients have so much money, and it's like, no, like the more money you have, the stingier you are with.
Yeah, no, it is true. I think the harder they worked, or the more they have, the more they're very cautious about how they're going to spend it, as opposed to, if I was my own client, I would be bankrupt, because I'd be like, "Yes, we should do that and that. We'll get them all." Where I think people
Yeah,
have
no comment on designing. My husband says that
is
you
your
and I should
husband
not be left in a we
Barb
should not be left alone in a room together. Jenna and my husband bring everyone back down to reality because
they're so dull.
I know, right? Like, why not get a $50,000 table or yeah.
Buzzkills that they are. And just an option. But
The wallpaper I originally wanted for the hallway to share with friends was about I drive a Prius and it's like 12 years old. So it's like four of my cars.
it was a
Um,
crazy little number. Even
yeah,
I was
we
like,
didn't do it for the
we,
record.
we did not do it. We found a great alternative. But yeah, I was like, I remember being like, that was pricey.
Mhm.
I forgot your question now.
Sorry. It was the question well that I don't think I even got to my question. I just got excited talking to you. But the question was working, what is it like to work? What are the unique challenges? Because again, I think from the outside it can look so glamorous and everyone is like, oh, it's so easy. Your clients just have all the money in the world. But especially you're working in such challenging locations. You just did a beautiful wedding in Mexico. And I remember seeing the photos of it, and the dining room chairs are basically like our dining room chairs in
Built.
white. I was like, wait, how did you like first those were so expensive. I mean, again, like I know I'm like not my client, but I'm like, those were so expensive. Like we really debated getting those. And
And they
there's
have
a whole thing.
75 of them or 100 of them.
I'm like, what the hell? And how did you get them in a jungle in Mexico? So tell me a little bit about working with these kinds of clients and the fun parts and the challenges.
The fun parts are that they have these great visions and that a lot of them are really willing to think outside of the norms because I think, for example, the client that you're referring to in Mexico, they do really fun events. They have a very creative life. And so this wasn't their once in a lifetime moment as far as design was concerned, if you will. I mean, obviously their wedding was, and that's the most important thing to remember, but they're willing to be more risky, a little more risky. They're willing to be like, yeah, let's try this, let's do that. And so that's a really fun part. And like for that client, I mean, there was really no boundaries as far as imagination. If you could have seen some of the text streams that went back and forth, we all looked like we were on a mushroom trip. I mean, they were just wild ideas, and to the point where we're like, could we really do that? Could we have them flown in on a drone with these people dropping in? Maybe that's a possibility. But so that's the great part. And that they also really appreciate quality, and they'll know the difference between, you know, X and Z. And we're always like pushing for quality on anything that the client's the guests are gonna touch. So linens, paper goods, cutlery, all those that we're like, they're gonna pick those up and they're intrinsically gonna know, oh, this is a cheap rental, or, oh, this is something I actually would have in my home. So we work really hard on that. The more challenging side with clients is sometimes with the ultra high net worth people, they aren't actually normally looking at what that things cost. Their day-to-day lives happen in such a way that things are just provided for them just by nature of who they are and what their lifestyles are like. So I'll give an example without giving any names, obviously. But we had a client that wanted to do like a pre-event, like on a Wednesday or Thursday. They were like, we just want all our friends to gather. And when they say all their friends, I'm talking 120 people or whatever. And then we're just going to walk around, and then we'll just pop into this bar, and then we'll all have drinks, and then we'll go there. And we're like, well, you can't just pop into a bar with 120 people and expect, like, we need to let them know you're coming. We need to have all of these things in place. You know, we need to pay the bill. And they were like, no, we'll just pop in. And we're like, no, that isn't. But in their life, they just go into a bar with their friends, and things do happen for them, but not 120 of them. And we know that the difference is when you're out with your friends normally and the bar goes, no, you just go to the next bar. Well, we can't have that happen. Just people as planners or designers, we can't wandering the streets. But sure enough, they just kept pushing. It's fine. Lane had the foresight to call the bar that we thought they were going to end up with and do some pre-planning and warning, but we didn't get to do everything we wanted. And sure enough, they got there and they're like, no, we don't have enough bartenders here for 120 people. And then they realized who they were, and they called, we moved it all along. But the expectation of that things just happen. And I'm like, things just happen because you have money and someone behind you is paying for it. So sometimes as the person in control of that, it's a little stressful, trying to convince them that you're not just trying to take their money, that you're trying to ensure that what they want to happen will happen on that day. That's the pressure of events is, yeah, we could wing it normally, but this is your wedding. I'm not going to wing it that it's not going to happen. I have to have a plan and then 7 plans behind that to make sure that it happens according to what you want. So yeah, they can be tricky.
Sure, with some of those clients, it's not even, I know, like for me, like I'm a vendor who like would work under you, so things would go through you. But I know for some individuals, like if you're not even talking to the client necessarily, you're talking to their business manager or
Yeah.
their house manager. I've had whole shot list conversations with like brides' former nannies who are now the house manager,
No,
um,
no, you know,
trying to guess what photos they're gonna want, and like, are they talking to this sibling and this ex stepmom? Like,
yeah, all that funny stuff, they don't even know. Like, sometimes we have people that are like, "Oh, just pick out our, music." I'm like, "You don't know what you want your first dance to be?" Lindsay's very good at it. Don't let me do it. I'm tone deaf as chill and no rhythm. As we've discussed, you have no rhythm either, so we could be even on that. But yeah, it's interesting. It's a different level. There is when you're working in that, there is nothing that you're not asked to do and that you are not expected to anticipate happening.
I think anticipation is the best word possible. And I would love, I think there's a lot of people who are probably listening in who want to work in that market and want to know like what it takes. So what would you say to someone who, is dreaming of working an event, working with clients like that? Like what would you say to them?
Um,
Not to put you on the spot.
I was like, do you really want that? I think that you have to realize, I mean, the old saying, more money, more problems, it didn't become a cliche because it's true. It is exactly why it became that, is because it is true. There's more moving parts, there's more chances of things going wrong, there's a zillion decisions that have to be made. The higher level of production, the higher level of planning, travel, that just is multiplies itself the logarithmically, it gets bigger very quickly. So I think that knowing what your team's capable of before you jump into that is really important, because you're only as good as your last event, and if you stumble on that one, that could be painful. So don't discount the walk up, like don't discount the steps that it takes, because you learn from each one of those to get you to that next level. And yes, we all want the high net worth client who's willing to spend $1 zillion. But there's something really nice to be said about a client that has a healthy budget, enough to get you where you want, and is in alignment with what that will get them. The hardest ones are the ones that call you and describe a $5 million event, 4 days in Paris with all of these things, and they say their budget's $750,000, which is a huge sum of money. Don't get me wrong, but it's not enough to get you what you've just described. So there's something really lovely when someone says, I have 500,000 and I want to do this and I want to do that. And you're like, yeah, that's doable. And I can make that happen. And I will make it so beautiful within that scope. That is not to be discounted. Don't lose sight of how great those clients are either. But yeah, you get into the high net worth, one step at a time. Some people are really lucky and they just fall into it. We were not. We worked our way up on that. We
I
didn't
think
get that.
there are some people who are just lucky, but I think, as you guys said, that most people are doing that, or at least if there are some people who get there and then they fall, they don't stay there.
But
They're flash in the
they haven't
pans.
any chops to get there.
Yeah, the ones who stay there, I think most of the time that luck actually was a ton of hard work behind the scenes that they just
Right.
like you guys, there, don't let them see you sweat.
That's right. That's right. We're always like, we're swans on wedding day, no one's seeing our feet under the water. But
I always
it
say duck. I need to switch to swan. It's so
I
much
I
more
think it's a
elegant.
swan. I think it's because my hair's long and gray now. I thought it needs to be more elegant. I need to be a swan instead of a duck.
Yeah. Oh
I
my God.
can
I'm the duck. I'm
um,
okay. I know where
yeah,
I
I can
am.
be a swan too. But I think yes, we all want that client, but there's only so many of them. And not all of our clients fall into that category either. So I think there's just something to be said for a budget that matches expectations and pays your bills.
Absolutely. So, speaking of your beautiful events, I'd love to segue into chatting about one of them in particular. I've got this photo up here from a incredibly there's like not the adjective, there's no adjectives to describe what this event was. You built Italy in Malibu, and it was incredible. The photo, if you guys are watching on YouTube, you can see it here. If you're just listening in, there's a link to it in the show notes. But this whole event, you built Italy in a open space in Malibu. Like, from like, you'd look at this and you would think, oh no, this exists, and we're just talking about the olive trees, and maybe you brought the fountain in, but no, you built that structure.
Oh,
So tell me about this.
it's still one of our, just like our favorite. Like if I could go back and do it again, I would. It was towards the end of COVID, and well, towards the end of being stuck in our homes in COVID.
I'm like,
Um,
is COVID over? I
yeah,
don't
I know,
know.
that's why I wanted to rephrase that, because there is no end, but it was into that period of time. And the daughter wanted to give the mother a beautiful birthday party, and they had planned to go to Italy. But as travel restrictions were not, so I went to their home and we started talking, and I was like, well, let's do like an Italy. And at first it was like very thematic. And if you know us, like we don't like themes, like we don't want it to look thematic. So it just evolved. And so fortunately, these people have this beautiful property in Malibu, blank slate, and we had 3 months to do it, from start to finish, which is crazy if you look at it, the level of production. And just into what you were saying is, there were guests there that were best friends with these people who are at their property all the time. And I had more than one, like three or four men said to me, how did I never notice this building before? And like, did I just drive by it? And did they cut down trees and we couldn't see it? I'm like, it wasn't, it was a horse corral 2 weeks ago. And they're like, excuse my French, no shit. And I'm like, yeah, no shit. We built that in this period of time. So it was magic in a bottle. I just have to tell you, that one just came together like a dream. And so we concepted this whole thing that it was a walk through Italy, and it started at Sicily and by their pool, which already existed. We didn't build a pool for it. And it was all like the capri colors and yellows, and oh my gosh, Hayward, the florals were stunning. And we had dancers that looked like, they were out from places. And then as we transitioned the guests, they walked along this long corridor that we had built that looked like an ancient Roman sort of arches with vines all brought in. And we had these entertainers that were painted gold like statues, who were standing there, who really did look like statues. And then as the people walked by, they started playing instruments and singing. And this we didn't orchestrate, but the moon was full and it was like a warm breeze. I remember walking down being like, damn, this is good. Like, like just that you have those moments. There's other events where you're like, well, I don't know. This was just like one of those moments. And then that walked them into this beautiful piazza, which had a true wood burning fireplace, pizza oven, a fishmonger, like all the things. And then from that, afterwards, we transitioned them into what looked like a bar in Rome. I forgot the hotel that the girls used as inspiration. And it was decked out, like there was every detail that was in there. I mean, in every day, like the pictures in the pizza place were actually like family pictures of them from way back. And the street signs were all like her birth date or places so there was all sorts of, anyways, it was the best event ever. It was so fun, but it was over. And the next morning I went back to the property, and there was the grandpa or the father, I can't remember who it was, an elderly gentleman sitting outside on one of our little stone benches outside in the piazza. And I said, hey, what are you doing? He's like, it's just so beautiful. I want to keep experiencing it. And I was like, oh, it's all worth it. Like all this hard work. And it was definitely a bit. I remember looking at Lane and Lindsay. We walked by each other like about 20 minutes before showtime. And we're like, we pulled this off. I can't freaking believe it. This happened. Because it was, like I said, a very short period of time we did that from start to finish. So that was a long story about that picture, but it's just so, it makes me so, that event just makes me so happy. And I will say, it's usually the event somebody will be like, so you did the Italy event, tell us about it. It just had that, it was, like I said, we didn't plan the moon and the warm breeze and the great lighting, but it was fun.
But you built Italy
I
in
built it, we
Melbourne.
built Italy. Yep, we did really truly build Italy, and so had some great partners on that one.
Yeah, I worked at that say I worked with that family on an event the year later, and I remember because it's their own private home, and I was like trying to find some photos. I was like, oh, but they built all this, like all this beauty. That's not
There was nothing
they
there,
didn't
just
leave it
me.
behind. Which their house is obviously gorgeous and we had
That's
plenty
funny.
of spots to shoot in. But
There was
yeah,
no concept. It was a horse corral again. We had to build back the horse corral when we were done.
Yep, that's the horse crawl was there, which obviously, yeah, this house is beautiful, but all of these incredible spaces where I was like, oh my gosh, I get to shoot in these, and I was like, oh nope, that packed
We,
up and
I think they donated our team donated all of those sets, or most of them, what was salvageable, to drama department so they could use them. So they didn't totally go to waste.
oh, I love that. How cool. I was wondering like what happens with.
Yeah, because there was lots of stuff in that.
Well, so that's all the glamorous side of it. And I love how you said that the three of you were like, yeah, we pulled this off. I'd love to hear if you're okay sharing a little bit of the streams again. Like it's like the hubris of like the newbies that are like, I could do that. And it's like, could you?
Oh my gosh, there's so many stories on that one. Like I said, we ended up working with actual film set designers, helped us build that, which was amazing because they were so used to fast moving things. Like when they first painted the outside, I was taking pictures and sending them back to Lane and Lynn's, and they're like, that's not the right color, it's not the right pink, it looks too pink. And I was like, well, they already painted it. And the guy, and normally in our world, they'd be like, that's the color you get. And the guy standing next to me goes, you don't like the color? And I was like, no, it's too pink, we want it more like an aged stucco. And he's like, oh, all right. 4 hours later, it's a new color. I was like, dang, that was great. I think that one of the funniest stories, which almost was a disaster, but was so hubris, we relied, as we thought we should have, and on a vendor not to be named, to pull the fire permit. They had assured us that would be done. There was lots of people. Now we're in a canyon in Malibu in September. Santa Ana's, issues there. Matter of fact, this property is sometimes is used for the firemen to stage out for the big fires. And it is the night before the event, and we're all standing doing pre-con of things, the team, and he goes, oh, I didn't pull that. Yeah, exactly. Your face is exactly, this is us.
Yeah, for those listening in, my eyes just got as big as
Really
saucers.
big. And my mouth dropped open, and Lindsay are like, what do you mean? And then the team that had hired that person was like, what do you mean? He goes, I just didn't have time, I didn't do it. And we're like, I mean, I'm gonna put X number of guests of very well-known people in a tent with a wood burning fireplace in it, and you're telling me you don't have a permit? Like, I can't. I was like, we were all freaking out. We're like, we can't do it. And the one guy goes, well, the only thing, and you're never going to find one on whatever day it was at this time of year, is if you had a fireman that could be on site for the job. And Lane goes, I'll be right back. What they didn't know is Lane's married to a fireman.
Done.
So
Truly full service.
yeah, so we truly are. We will, I always say, Lindsay's a birth doula, Lane's got a fireman. We will serve you no matter what, how you go into labor, you have a fire, we'll take care of you.
Love it.
But
I'm imagining you traking someone with like an Hermes pen on site.
I can do anything. I don't recommend that. So we called Povey, and he came out, and he also, not only is he a structural fire, but he had worked in woodland, wildland fire forever. So he knew all the firemen, he knew where the well was, he walked everybody through the whole thing, what to do. And then he stayed on property the whole night because he knew where the wells were and what we would need to do, and work with their security team. So we were very fortunate that we had that in our back pocket. But when you're talking about behind the scenes of things you don't know, like now we always are talking like, do we need fire? Do we need EMTs? What do we need on property? That was the first time we're like, oh crap, we should have known that, I think, and we didn't. And we relied on somebody else. And really at that level, at the end of the day, you really can't rely on anyone that you haven't checked yourself somewhere along the line. But yeah, it all worked out great. And Povey was standing in the piazza eating off the charcuterie table. And I was like, you're not allowed to eat here. You're working here. He's like, I'm not a planner. Popping cheese in his mouth. I was like, you firemen are all the same. But
The
anyways,
person who takes the first, because no one wants to touch the perfect charcuterie board. So he was just helping. He was
just
just
helping us
showing the guests.
along. He's just getting, and he's very, I can say it because I'm his mother. He was very handsome in his fireman outfit. So all the girls were all like, oh, what do you need? But yeah, that was definitely we were sweating for like a good 45 minutes. We were panic stricken, like that we were going to have to call the event because it's like, we can't put them in there.
That is
Imagine we'd
terrifying.
spend $1 billion and we're like, sorry, we can't do that.
Well, but that's when I am telling people when I am trying to teach about how to get from A to Z in your career. It's not about not making mistakes. It's about you got to make them. Like that's why I said you can't. That whole first part of you got to do all the jobs, just don't show them all. But you got to learn because you don't know what you don't know until you know it, and it's often too late. So it's taking that time to reflect, and I'm sure that is now on your checklist.
So our company's Lynden Lane Co, and we call it LLC, and we say in-house, that's lessons learned company. Because every event we're like, oh, what did we do right here? What did we do really wrong here? What could we make this better? And I think not only do you have to make mistakes, you have to be able, I think one of the key factors in succeeding this is being adaptable. Like, oh, that's not going this way. What can we do to pivot, and being decisive and being able to think on your feet in very stressful moments. Like you have to be somebody that can that is willing to do whatever needs to be done. And I'm telling you, we've done it. We've schlepped flowers. My team dismantled a dance floor at 2 a.m., a giant band stage in it because the vendor didn't show up. And the hotel, a beautiful hotel, had another event the next day. And there was no way we were going to let someone else's event be messed up by this person, I'm going to say, and I'm using that term loosely, who didn't do his job. And so, but again, great creative partners, the guys from Found, the guys from Amber Lighting, were all helping us dismantle and roll carpet at 4 a.m. I'd like to say I was helping, but I'd gone to bed and the girls were doing it by then.
That's
but
fair.
I heard it was really,
You've earned it.
but it's about being adaptable and being able to think on your feet is really the key to success.
Absolutely. I say that the mistakes are important. You analyze them, you adapt, and then you move forward. And I love what you said of what LLC stands for. That's amazing. I like to say, like, there's no mistakes. There's just valuable life lessons.
That's
And
right.
I have been, the amount of time, whether it's when I'm teaching, I have a student who just like, their deposit was like such a small amount. And then we have the pandemic and everyone is fighting to keep their deposits and to get money that they're owed. And it's like, no money in the hand versus, you learn these things. You don't let them get you down. You have to take the time to reflect and be analytical. And I think that's what so many business owners in the wedding world can miss, because like we're artists, so it can be hard to be like, oh no, we're actually business owners. Forget about that part sometimes.
It's not pretty. You gotta do the right things for your company.
Yeah, one of the keys, because I think it comes from my anxiety, but one of the good parts of my anxiety is I am such a hyper analytical person. And when I was starting my career in New York, I would drive home at like, a lot of weddings were out in the Hamptons or stuff, and we'd have like a 3-hour car ride with my assistant and second shooter, and we would do like a full, like, I'd call it my autopsy. We'd do like a whole postmortem on the event, picking apart like, oh, you didn't get that shot, shoot, I thought you had. Next time I'm going to make sure you tell my assistant and not me, because that's going to go in one ear, not the other. Like,
You're busy.
yes. And I'm like, that's actually not, I'm not going to say that's a weakness, that I'm busy and I forgot. The weakness is that I didn't tell you ahead of time to tell my assistant that we need that shot, not me. Like, I know my own what I'm capable of, and
Right.
I know how to move forward. So I think it's that analysis that so
And
many
you're
people
like
miss.
the star of that photography team. You're the one that's running the show, and you don't have time. Like you said, it goes in one ear and out the other. It's just that you're focused on doing the reason why they hired is to get Rebecca's photos, and so you have to rely on that team member to communicate that. And the same with us. We have to rely on our team all the time. And we have a great team, but it's, sometimes I'm sure they want to shoot us.
But part of being the team leader is realizing that it's not like if my second shooter doesn't get a shot for the most part, like unless like, they were out having a smoke or something. I hope they're
Right.
not. I'm like super allergic to cigarette smoke, so I hope not. But whatever, like if I've never worked with someone who's literally screwed up like that. Usually it's I didn't give them the tools to succeed. And I think
Right.
that's something we have to remind ourselves as team leaders constantly, that as much as it sucks, it's often on us. As you said, the doing that double checking. I mean, it does sound like it was on that vendor for not pulling a permit, but as you said,
Maybe
next.
where's the permit? There's always something to be learned, and there's your team really relies on you to set the stage and do the right thing. So we're all working together at the end of
So
the
I
day.
know I've taken so much of your time already. If I can ask couple last thoughts, what would you, if you could go back to, and it can be 2012, you starting this business, or I know you're a serial entrepreneur, it can be even further back. Like what advice would you give baby Barbi?
Baby Barbi, ooh, she's a long time gone. Trust your instincts. Trust when you get, I call it Satori. I don't call it Satori. I refer to it as Satori, which is a Japanese term of sudden knowing. When all at once you just go, oh, I know this is the right step. Sometimes it can be something big or something small. I definitely had it with Lynden Lane, and I've had it other times in my life, and trusting that process and knowing that event, and then trusting the process that's going to make it, and give yourself grace to be adaptable and flexible, because it's very funny in our career. Sometimes I'll look back and it was such a windy road, but we got exactly where we wanted to be, but it was not a straight road. And had I been rigid and said, no, that's not the direction we want to go, and not taken an opportunity because it wasn't in my plan, we probably would have never got to where we are now. So I would say be flexible.
Amen. That could not be true. I tell this story all the time. My first client to ever spend $10,000 with me was a referral from a newborn client that was like when I was doing like babies in buckets, like, and I was
Little
charging
swaddle.
like, oh yeah, swaddling on, putting them like in those little poses, because that's how I paid my rent in my early days in New York. And
Yeah.
I did not find much artistic fulfillment in it. And I was charging nothing for it. But it was a referral from one of those clients who was like a friend of the mom's, and that was my first $10,000 client.
Yeah.
And you
You would
never
have
know.
never thought, I mean, just real quick, that's how we got into interiors. A wedding client that said no to us then said, I'm not hiring you because I want you to do my house someday. And I was like, yeah, right. Nice way to let us down. And then they were true to their word and called us to do their house. And it opened up a whole new door that we'd wanted to push open. And had I just blown her off and not stayed in touch, that door wouldn't have gotten open. So giving yourself grace to see the opportunities when they come in small ways, and to be flexible as you grow.
That's the perfect way to end it. I'm not going to add anything more. Thank you so much for being with us today. This was so incredible. I will have in the show notes. So if you guys are in your cars listening as you're driving, be sure to check out that photo and check out their amazing Instagram, check out their website. You guys are, I don't know how you could not be familiar with Lynden Lane, but if you are not, boy, are you in for a treat checking out all of their beautiful work. And I can't wait to, I'm not sure when this is coming out, but we'll have some more photos of our house as well to show the beauty that they've done here, because we are endlessly appreciative.
Thank you so much. It's a true honor to get to talk to you and to be your designer. It's been my true pleasure.
Well, you're a good liar. Thank you.
No, I'm not. I'm a terrible liar.